Welcome to episode 4 of the Leaders Room. I am your host, Samuel Nimako-Mensah, and today we have a truly exceptional guest, Mr. Kofi Amansie Boateng. He is a software engineer at Palo Alto Networks, which is a global leader in cybersecurity. Now, Kofi's journey in the tech world is not only marked by personal success, but also by his unwavering commitment to mentoring and helping others break into the tech industry. Kofi, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Samuel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's start by diving into your background. I always like to ask people growing up, what they wanted to do. And I understand that you wanted to be an astronaut. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I remember in class three, they came about. My teacher asked us to write what we wanted to do, and I think it was more of like, well, everybody wanted to be the best person they could be. So around that time, there was a lot of news on space travel and all, and that was being done by the foreign countries, right? So I was like, okay, well, I mean, I want to do this. I want to go to space. So that's where it began. Yeah.
That's an awesome story. So from an astronaut, you end up becoming a software engineer. And I know that your father had some kind of role to play in this. Can you tell me about your father's influence in kind of shaping your career?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Um, so that question is in two parts. Let me first tackle the easy one. So how I ended up not being an astronaut and being a software engineer was, I mean, eventually I came to the US, and I may go over this at some point, but when I came to the US, I did want to be an astronaut, but then I realized, hey, you can't be an astronaut if you're a Ghanaian in the US. So that was how I gave up on that dream. Um, but to answer the first part of your question, which is definitely more significant, which is how my dad played a role in shaping my career into software engineering. Yeah, that's an actually really long story, but let's see. I'll give it a shot. I'd say my dad has always been there to support me. I didn't start off as a talented student. Actually, I remember from class one to class two, I was actually doing quite badly
Mhm.
in terms of like say math and science. The things that you study in Ghana eventually come here and try and do software engineering. So I was quite bad in actually all subjects.
Mm.
But in class three, I don't know. I was talking with my dad, um, and he was telling me how he was, and his friends was also collaborating how good he was, like in these subjects, right when he was in school. Um, so that really made me ponder, and I mean, honestly, I prayed to God about it, and I know that I got a gift in class three. Like I know that, and everybody that knows me knows that because from that point on, I started to top my class in everything that had to do with math and science consistently.
Mm.
And so when I got to, we call it in Ghana JSS, junior high school. Um, I wanted to go to a school called Pesek at that time. Like that was and even today, that's arguably the best school in science and math.
Yeah, arguably is a good one because I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So,
but keep going. Yeah.
yes, I wanted to go to Pesek, and I got in and all. But my headmaster in JSS, he had gone to Pesek, and before I graduated from JSS, he called my dad um, into his office, and he was like, "Hey, I know Pesek is a good school. I went to Pesek myself, but he basically convinced my dad that he saw something much greater in me, and he convinced my dad instead of taking me to Pesek to take me to a school called SOSAGIC, which was an international. This is an international school and running an international um, program. It's called the
Mhm.
International Baccalaureate, um, and he basically convinced my dad that if I go that route, he can see that I would do greater things than if I went the Pacific. That was his vision,
Yeah,
right?
assessment. Yeah.
Um, and and my dad bought it. and he convinced me. At that time, I didn't know much about SOS, right? Um, but I'll say honestly, looking back, that was a big turning point for me. Because what happened then was I went to SOS, and clearly, if I talk about SOS, it's I'll describe it as like a school for the elites. So if you think about anybody that's really big in Ghana, like think of the presidents, the
Hmm.
ministers, uh, like the super rich people in Ghana, they take their children to SOS, right?
Yeah,
So all of my mates were like in that league, right? Um, and then I mean, my dad was what to do. He was, I would say, more middle class, upper class, right? But like the people there, honestly, they were like, I don't know, super super rich, right?
yeah,
Um, and so that also really inspired me, right? Because I knew that my dad was paying so much money. Like, I mean, the fees there is even more expensive than school and some private schools here in America, honestly. So,
wow,
and my dad is in Ghana, and he was really, I could see he was really sacrificing to put me through.
yeah,
But I'm just grateful to God that, like, also at SOS, in terms of math and science, I taught consistently. So that was also very um, inspiring to him. I mean, so he continues doing that. It was also inspiring to me because I knew he was putting a lot of effort. So it was like a two-way street. Like I knew he was really pulling his weight, and I was also trying to really pull my weight there. Um,
yeah. Awesome. So let's pivot a little to your journey now. You were able to graduate from SOS, and then you came here to the States. Tell us a little bit about the journey and what it takes to become a software engineer, right? So in terms of school, the programs you took, and then what it actually took for you to become a software engineer.
yeah, amazing. So from SOS, um, let's start from SOS, right? So from SOS, Vegas was I got into Columbia University. So that was a full scholarship tuition, right, to come study here. And when I was coming, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something related to engineering, right? So I got into
Mhm.
engineering school at Columbia. Um, but when I got here, I was thinking more of electrical engineering because that's what you are exposed to, right? I
Mhm.
mean, a lot in Ghana. Um, of course, I was also exposed to computer science a bit, but when I was coming, I was more thinking of electrical engineering. Yeah. So I took a an initial course in electrical engineering, but I had a mentor here in Colombia who was also my high school senior in Ghana. So we all came from the same high school in Ghana, SOS, and then we all came to Colombia. Yeah.
Got it.
So he had also taken electrical engineering route, and he was a senior at that time when I was entering Colombia. And he basically advised me to look into computer science because he can see that is the future. That's what he told me. And at that time,
Mm.
he had gotten an internship with Goldman Sachs as a software engineer, even though he had done electrical engineering. So he had minored in
Oh,
computer science, and that's what got him the job. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I want to get something that I think has really good job prospects, right? So I took a class in computer science then. It was called, I forgot, an Introduction to Computer Science in Java, and I loved it. I mean, it wasn't easy for sure, but
yeah.
it was definitely intellectually stimulating, which is what I was looking for. So after so after I took the computer science course, it was definitely intellectually stimulating, and I decided to um, pursue computer science. And um, it was amazing because after my second term of studying computer science, I decided to solve a real world problem by building an application, so a mobile application. It was called the Tree Bible application.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
remember that.
so this was back in maybe 2014, and that was like maybe my second year of college, something like that. So I took up upon myself to build a tree Bible app. I mean, and then I met up with actually someone else you may know, Joseph and
Yeah.
Kojo Nako. And at that point in time, we were beginning to form an organization called Sankofa Tech, right? And so the Chief Bible app came up out of Sankofa, um, and it did really well. We did run into some issues with copyrights, and so we had to take it down. But like, it did so well that I was like, okay, I think I have a future in computer science and I don't know, app development, or it's something that has to do with computer science. And so that's really where the passion came from.
Nice. Well, I know that since you've graduated, you've worked at Amazon, specifically Audible, you've worked at Facebook, and now you're at Palo Alto Network. So, can you provide some insights about what you do on a day-to-day basis at Palo Alto? And, for the listener who's like asking himself, what does a software engineer do on a day-to-day basis? Give us some insights.
Great question. So day to day basis, it varies based on project, but I would say in general, at some point in time, you'll be doing some design work. So say designing a project, designing several components of a project that you're working on. And at some point in time, you would actually be coding. So maybe you pick out a specific part of the project on your team and you work on that. Maybe you write some unit tests on that and all of that. At some point in time as well, maybe you're doing some form of testing, right? At some point in time, um, you may be writing some documentation on how whatever you've built is supposed to be used. So
Mhm.
it's a whole cycle, um, but I'd say it's enjoyable if you enjoy it. Like if you enjoy coding and building things to solve real world problems, um, it's definitely enjoyable. So
Got it. And I know that you've done a lot of work mentoring people. The tech industry is challenging to get in. Being an engineer myself, I kind of understand what the workflow is and hiring people and stuff like that. A lot of your time you spend in your free time is to help mentor people. So, um, tell us how you go about providing opportunities for others to kind of get into the tech space.
amazing. So what I've decided to do is to spend maybe some of my Sundays running some programs to teach people how to solve some lead code questions or some design questions. This comes from an initiative from Sankofa Tech. So Sankofa Tech sponsors some high school students through studying computer science in college. And so these high school students, when they're at the stage of looking for jobs or even from um, was it first year, freshman year to junior year, we organize coding sessions for them. So I lead a lot of these coding sessions. Um, and that is directly to help them polish up the skills they need for coding or for design. So that's one aspect. There's also another aspect of, like, say, mentoring people who just reach out. So we have several people in the Ghanaian community, especially, who are eyeing a spot in the tech world. So from time to time, I get on calls with many of these people, um, try to understand what are their strengths and try to help them know where they can pivot in tech for the best results. And so that's what I spend most of my time doing in terms of mentorship.
Right, and I know that obviously that's a lot of commitment from your perspective, but in spite of that, you've been able to launch a couple of new apps on the App Store. You want to tell us a little bit about some of your professional achievements? I know I think I've seen three of them. I look for them before this show, so tell us a little bit about
That's
your
interesting.
apps
Yeah,
you have on the App Store. Yeah.
yeah. So honestly, building apps is a passion. Um, I don't even know how many apps I have on the App Store at this point, but yeah, I think it's around maybe three or four. Of course, I would say the one I'm most proud of. will be the first app, obviously, because it was the first app I had built or helped build. Um, and that was achievable. Now, of course, that's not in the App Store now because of copyright issues, but there's also now the Tree Sabbath School. There's one called Luminex. That's a photo sharing app for Bible um, verses and things of the sort. Um, and there are definitely more. I just can't remember. There's one called Prayer Focus to help people improve their prayer life through social media. So it's definitely a passion, and there are many more ideas that I would want to solve for and create apps for. Yeah, I'm just praying for strength and wisdom for that.
Yeah, and so how do you start, right? How do you start building an app? What are some of the main? Obviously, you need an idea, right? That's probably the first and number one thing. But once you have an idea about an app you want to actually build, what are the things that you need to consider in order to actually get from zero to the app store?
Amazing. Yeah. So a couple of things. I think you need generally two things. Number one is the knowledge, right? So, and number two is the passion. I think with these two things, you can solve any problem you want to solve. So the knowledge part of it, that's something that I picked up through classes in school, through YouTube, through um, paid courses. Like there are so many paid courses to teach you how to what you need to know to build an app, right? So if you're interested, you can, or you can just even use YouTube. Honestly, like I just started with YouTube, um, and you would learn whatever you want to learn if you have the passion for it. So that's the second part of it because
Mm.
it's definitely it has a very steep learning curve for sure. And I think initially and even now, sometimes I can grind through the whole night just trying to fix some problems on an app I'm trying to create, right? And that's because like I have the passion for it, and I believe like this idea has to get out, right?
Yeah,
So it's a combination of those two things, like building up your knowledge base, which I'll say is not that difficult in today's world. Um, the passion part of it definitely has to be there for you to realize gains. So
got it. So what I'm hearing is that apart from just having or conceptualizing a specific app that you want to build, you got to learn through obviously various sources, YouTube being maybe the easiest, and then the passion. So um, if you had one thing to choose in terms of what you're especially proud of that you've achieved in your career, what would it be?
that's honestly that's a hard question. But it will definitely be related to being able to build apps to solve problems. I know that's a vague answer, but I can't point to. There are several things I'm really proud of, but all of those things have a common root of being able to solve problems through
Hmm.
technology. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that is really what drives me a lot of time. Um, just the passion to solve some problem and being able to do that through technology. So there's several other problems that I would want to solve as well, and the same motivation keeps me going. So that would be my proudest achievement, I think.
absolutely. So, for someone who wants to jump into the tech industry, what are some of the technical skills and some of the advice that you would give to someone who wants to follow after you in your footsteps? Because I'm sure you've learned a lot. You've maybe made mistakes, and you've seen things that maybe if you had a second choice, you maybe would do differently. So
Mm.
what's some advice you would give to someone who's just starting their journey, so that you could maybe give them advice to get to where you are?
Okay, yeah, definitely. Let me answer your question, but I don't think I'm somewhere that they they would really want to want to get to. Yeah, we are all starting, I think, but I would say again, passion is really important. Um, just have the passion for it because it's going to be tough. So once you have that in the back of your mind, then um, if you're starting off in the tech career and you know what you want to do, maybe let's say you want to, if you don't know what you want to do, you have to figure that out. Do you want to be a software engineer? Do you want to go into business analytics? Do you want to go to cybersecurity, whatever? Once you figure that out, let's say you want to be a software engineer, right? And let's say you want to build apps. So the next thing I would recommend if you're starting off is try to see what you want, where you want to study. You can go through a boot camp. That's very common today, and um, I'd recommend people doing boot camps, honestly. You can also decide to go to school and study these things. Um, but know that whatever you study, either in a boot camp or school, it won't necessarily, for a lot of times, map one to one with what you want to achieve in the tech world. So,
Mhm.
whatever you study are building blocks for you. You take those building blocks and then you do your own research to get to where you want to go. So, for example, let's say you want to build apps. You go to school, they will teach you basics of coding and all, right? Because they are teaching for whatever field in software engineering you want to go into. Once you have those basics, right, those would most likely never be enough to actually create an app on your own unless you take a course specifically in teaching how to create apps, right? But in our example, yeah, it won't be enough, let's say, to know how to create an app. But it will be enough for you to start your own research into how you create an app, for example, right? So now creating the app is, let's say, your goal. Your goal can be anything. Maybe you want to create a website or you want to create something else, right? But it's about being able to apply the basics that you learn and doing your own research and then using those basics to get you to or to catapult you to where you want to go. So I would say having that kind of mindset would be really helpful for you. Um, yeah, you wouldn't learn everything in school or in a
Yeah,
book, so you have to be willing to learn a lot, um, no matter what tech field you get into. And now things are really, really changing, so you have to be prepared to keep learning a lot always
mm,
if you want to be successful in this field.
absolutely. Machine learning, generative AI, all of those things are up and coming things.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap this up, what does the future look like for you? What are some of your personal goals, and what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind in the tech industry as you grow in your career?
Yeah, amazing. So I would say I started off trying to um, pick some really top companies in the world to work with, right? To build some knowledge, right? Um, the end goal for me is to utilize these things I've learned from all these companies and also experiences that I'm picking up, maybe from building all these apps and all, to solve a lot of problems, especially back home in Ghana. That's really
Mm.
what I would want to do. Like, I'd want to create solutions, apps, maybe, or anything, technical solutions that will solve some really, really important problems, especially in Ghana, for example. And I feel like once I get there and maybe form a company out of that and all, um, yeah, I would have achieved whatever I wanted to achieve in the tech field, and then maybe start to chill or something. But that's really that's really where I want to go with this. Like, I want all the knowledge that I'm picking up to be channeled towards something quite significant. Like you talked about legacy, so I'd want that to be my legacy.
Well, thank you, Kofi. That brings us to the end of our discussion and our insights with Mr. Kofi Amansie Boateng, whose dedication to mentoring and empowering others is truly inspiring. We're grateful to have had you on the Leaders Room. And just briefly, is there one final message you'd like to share for anyone listening to this? Just briefly.
Yes, and that would be again have passion for what you want to do. Um, you can do whatever you want to do in the tech field if you have passion for it. If you have passion for it, you'll be forced to learn whatever you want to learn. You'll be forced to follow up. You'll be forced to um, create whatever solutions you want to create. So I think for me, having the passion for whatever you want to do, whatever you want to achieve, and following up on that passion and keeping that passion burning consistently is what will take you to achieve your goals in the tech field. So
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's truly inspiring. Well, that concludes another episode of the Leaders Room. We hope Kofi Amansie Boateng's story and his commitment to mentorship has inspired you as much as it's inspired me. If you enjoyed this episode, please continue to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Stay tuned for more stories of leadership, mentorship, and personal growth. Until next time, keep learning, keep giving back, and keep leading by example.